Good morning and welcome to the Big Buzz Breakfast Club. We are excited to be talking about leveraging marketing and communications for nonprofit growth this morning. My name is Melissa Legowski. I'm the founder, owner, and queen bee at Big Buzz Idea Group. Super excited also to acknowledge our amazing team who's working behind the scenes to make this morning possible, and really excited to have you joining with us today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be shared with you after the event is over later today or early tomorrow. We will be taking questions in the Q&A box this morning, and all questions will be answered at the end. And if you need to adjust your closed captioning, please feel free to do so. We do like to try to make sure that our recordings are available to all people. A little bit about Big Buzz Idea Group. I myself am a former executive director where I was responsible for 12 newsletters, 24 events, 8 committees, and about 225 members. And I was a single staff person for that organization. So as we come to you this morning, I certainly have a perspective where I think I understand the roles that a lot of you are in and really want to share some lessons I've learned along the way. Our company was founded based on my role in being an executive director and just knowing that nonprofit organizations and the amazing people leading them often need somebody to lean on. So Big Buzz Idea Group knows that many nonprofit executives lack the time, staff, skills, and the funding that they need to thrive and succeed. Big Buzz fills gaps in management, marketing, and events so that you can focus on the big picture and position your organization to thrive. Today, as we talk about marketing and communications, we are going to review the importance of goal setting. This is something that we are really focused on at Big Buzz Idea Group, whether it's an event, whether it's the overall management, whether it's communications. Goal setting is something we value highly. We want to also talk about the receiver's journey today a little bit and what that means and how you can use it to level up your communications. Of course, the value of sharing stories is one of the highest ways to grow your organization and bring more fans and supporters on board. And then utilizing better calls to action. I would like to start this morning with a question, and if you could just share your thoughts in the chat, but I would love to know when the last time is that your organization updated the marketing materials. Was it last month? Was it in the last 6 months, in the last year, the last 3 years, or has it been more than 3 years since you've updated your materials? And I'll just give folks a minute to share their comments with us. I know that when I was serving as an executive director myself and I stepped into that role, opened the file drawers, and everything had just been definitely washed, rinsed, and repeated for I don't know how many years, but I'm going to guess it was probably at least 10 or 12. So there's certainly organizations that just have not made this a priority, and I understand that. So there's no judgment here, but just really starting to talk about what your time frame has been. So last year or so, within the last 12 months, the last 6 months, last 3 years, but ongoing, never enough time to do it all at once. I understand that completely. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about some best practices today and how to integrate doing it on a more regular basis. So thank you for sharing. The best marketing doesn't feel like marketing is a quote by Tom Fishburne. And I love to really think about this because, in my opinion, all of the marketing and communications that we are trying to do in the nonprofit space is really focused around relationship building. And there is I think, over my professional career in the early days of doing some of this, it felt very salesy, and salesy has always had kind of some bad connotations. But I think over time, it's really shifting in a beautiful way, and that really quality organizations, quality brands are definitely focused on relationship building and really connecting with their audience in a different way. So as we kind of set the stage for these conversations today, I'd like to take a minute to think about marketing materials that you receive, newsletters coming to your inbox. Maybe it's, materials coming to your mailbox. Maybe it is commercials you are seeing on TV, but really just taking a moment to kind of think about some of the brands that you see out there that really resonate with you and draw you in. Can you think of brands that you absolutely love? You love what they do. You love when they come on board. You love seeing their commercials. They really have a great story, or they always move you. I know there's a couple of brands out there that I think are really good at that. Are there some that you hate? Are there some marketing materials that absolutely repel you and you have kind of a guttural response that just makes you want to push that brand away? Are there emails coming in, newsletters to your inbox that you delete immediately and eventually you unsubscribe from? It's good to start to think about the things that we see around us that are really good and draw us in, because sometimes those can be inspiration for our own initiatives. So I like to just take a moment to reflect on that and encourage you to start to kind of pay a little bit more attention to, maybe it's a billboard or whatever the case might be. And what makes you open that and look at it a little closer? What makes you automatically throw it in the trash, and kind of use that as a barometer of things to try and maybe things you definitely don't want to do. As we start to think about your organization and what you want to do with your marketing, I think it's really important to look at what are your organizational goals. What do you want to accomplish this year? Hopefully, all of you are having a strategic planning session and you are working with your leadership to be able to, know what your focus is going to be for the next 12 months at some point in your year. Sometimes this happens at the highest level, so it's the CEO or the executive director and the board. And sometimes that information doesn't always make it all the way through if you might be a marketing director in a separate department, and you have to be more intentional about wanting to be part of these conversations and or making sure that this information is getting shared with you in all levels of your organization, because it really matters. Is your organization focused on more clients this year? Are you looking for more donors? Or perhaps you're trying to get really specific and it's more donors of a certain type. Are you trying to attract more attendees to your events, secure more volunteers, build your board pipeline? Are you focused on getting media attention or growing your online community? Or is it something else entirely? It's really important for you to know what your organizational goals are, because your marketing and communication efforts should absolutely be an extension of that. And so, does your communication currently reflect this? Are you looking at this? And it's an interesting, I think sometimes it seems kind of obvious, but I think that sometimes we can get a little bit kind of off track. I think we can, when we look very intentionally at what we're trying to accomplish, we will start to see in our marketing materials slight tweaks. Maybe it's a propositional phrase. Maybe it's a couple of words that you want to add or adjust. But when your marketing and your communications out in all of your channels gets on point with your organizational goals, it's just a really beautiful thing happens, and you start to manifest that reality in a much more intentional way. And I really think that that is so incredibly important, that it can really start to move the needle. But when we're wash, rinsing, and repeating, that doesn't take into account our current goals. That might be the goals of an organization a year ago or 5 years ago, or whenever the last time is that you really kind of tore things apart. And it's no shame, right? Nonprofit professionals are busy all the time. There's no shortage of things to do. There's no shortage of demands on your time. And so we have to be really intentional about weaving those goals and re-evaluating our marketing materials so that we can really be much more effective in the work we're doing. I think as we work through this journey, as you do that annual planning for your organizational goals, whether you're the marketing director, communications manager, or if you're the executive director and you're wearing all the hats, once you have those goals, carve out a little bit of time and give yourself the gift of going through your marketing materials for the year and thinking about what you might change. I think when you can carve out, maybe it's a half a day, couple of hours, and you sit down with your materials and you start to review them with this intention, I think you can start to make adjustments in a chunk of time that will benefit you for the whole duration of the year, because then you start chasing other deadlines and you get away from a lot of this. But again, intention creates manifestation. So it's definitely worth the time. And if it's a matter of, even on that annual planning, I think the other thing, once you start to think about what your goals are too, and what your key messaging is for the year, I believe, that just starts to really level up everything. It makes sure you've got cohesive messaging going out on all fronts. You can bring some leaders together, and you can even then add a brainstorming session around a couple of these other bullets that we're going to talk about, and even how best to change the language, or what should that key messaging look like. If you have a board member who's a writer or a marketer, maybe you can lean on them a little bit too, and even have them help you in this capacity, so that these changes can really start to intentionally take effect. And I really do believe, right, we're always chasing the timeline and the deadline. And then all the unexpected things come at us. And so we have the best of intentions that we can do this as we go, project by project or piece by piece, but it's not a reality in most people's world in the nonprofit space, in my experience. So taking this time to carve it out and making it a little bit of your annual planning process, I think it goes a long way in making sure you are making these tweaks. I also encourage you to think about how you can use units of conviction to your advantage. And what I mean by this is finding those personal stories or those details that make a statement far more powerful, right? So as we think about this, I give to XYZ charity because I really like their mission. That's an okay statement, but it doesn't really show passion and heart. And so when somebody can say, I give to XYZ charity because they supported my neighbor's daughter when she first got cancer, that starts to be a stronger message, a stronger statement. And so the more you can think about how people who are talking on behalf of your organization can really kind of embrace the messaging, but make it their own and make it more powerful with their own stories, is something that I don't think enough organizations focus on or think about. And so again, I think that this is a way that maybe it's a workshop with your board, maybe it's a 15 or 30-minute exercise to kind of take your messaging for the year and then help board members think about how they can make it personal. Who are your top donors? Why are they donating? If they share their story about the why, it's going to start to move the needle in such a powerful way. And those whys, you can get them in writing, you can get them in a video, you can put them on your social media, in your newsletter, and really start to leverage that content out in a way that it's going to continue to resonate with your message. But the beauty is, again, when you do that annual planning and you know what your top items are that you want to try to focus on, then all of your videos, all of those testimonials are going to support that if you're properly sharing the message out and you've gotten really clear on what you're trying to accomplish in the year. So then sharing the message. Inevitably, again, we're running fast, and I think that there's a lot of organizations we see that they forget how important it is to share this message throughout all of the layers of their organization. Maybe the CEO and the board go into the annual planning, they set those goals, and then it never gets shared beyond that on an intentional level. But it should go to the whole staff. It might need to go to your donors. It might need to go to your volunteers. And you really want to think about being able, maybe it's even your, if you're a membership-based organization, it might be important for your members to know what you're working on for the year. So thinking about how we share this is important. And I like the idea of creating a few key messages. A lot of PR professionals, if they're doing a lot of video, if they're doing a lot of pitching out, they will have certain key messages, knowing that in a media snippet, the media is going to take the interview a certain way, but you generally want to have about 3 nuggets that whoever your spokesperson is trying to weave into the conversation. And you try not to make it too overwhelming because it's too hard to remember and it gets too complicated. But you really want to know, what are those top priorities, and does everybody know that those are the priorities, so that they're weaving those into all the conversations they're having. And then that starts to get more people on board with you for your mission, your goals, and what you're trying to accomplish. And the reality is that most people want to help, and most people want to be able to know why they're helping. So the clearer you are, the more you can connect and get engaged with people that will want to support you. How many of you have thought about the receiver's journey? I think it's something that I had never thought about in my younger professional career. I just didn't think, I was always so close to the material, and being a staff of one with so many demands on my time as an executive director, I didn't have time to really think about what it was like on the other side of the aisle. And so now, we spend a lot of time trying to work with our clients to think about, what does the user think? What does the receiver think? Is this what they want to know? Is this what they want to see? And so I think when you flip the perspective, you start to get some really great insights and valuable improvements. I think then you start to think about, is taking action easy? And we work with a national organization that is part of, we work with the local chapter that's part of the national organization. And that national organization, it's so funny. They're sending out invoices for membership renewal. And then when people go to click the invoice to pay, there's a glitch in the system, and members can't pay, right? That's not making, action easy. And so you want renewing members to have a great experience. You want that to be simple, right? When somebody gets out the credit card and they're ready to make that commitment, you want to grab them while they're ready. You don't want to say, oh, go away and come back later. So really double checking the systems, making sure that taking action is easy in all of your communications, I think is really important. Thinking about what's in it for the recipient. It's just human nature that we always think about things from our own vantage point. And so, what's in it for somebody to donate? Can you make them the hero of the story? Can you make them make a difference in lives, where it really matters? Or can they help your organization go to the next level so that they can feel good about themselves? Because at the end of the day, giving makes people happy, giving makes people good. Participating, volunteering, all of those things are really powerful. So if you can use language and change the story in a way that you're helping a recipient see themselves in your organization, that matters. I love the idea too, for a lot of organizations, I think that they don't grab enough photos and use real photos whenever you can. I know that some nonprofits, based on the population you serve, it's more difficult to maybe use client photos and things of that nature. Maybe confidentiality is a higher priority, but then maybe you can focus on your staff, or maybe you can find other, your events and things of that nature. Because the other thing is that volunteers love to see themselves. Are you making volunteering look good and look fun? Because then you're going to magnetize and attract other people to come in to join. And so being able to share those stories. I know one client that we are working with, we've encouraged them to start rotating the photos that they're using so we can highlight more members on a regular basis, because through doing that, that helps people stay connected to this particular organization. There's a real value in the pictures that you're using, and stock photos are great. But when they're real people and people in your community may know them, may like them, you might be able to tag them and get exposure into other online, audiences, that starts to help you grow. And at the end of the day, that's something that we all want for every nonprofit. What is the frequency of your outreach? Is it the right frequency for your audience? Maybe you need to take a quick survey. Maybe you need to do a little bit of evaluation. We have seen organizations that definitely, are not communicating frequently enough. We've seen organizations that are oversaturating the communications out. And I know even in the annual campaigns, I've heard so many people talk about the fact that, some organizations seem a little overzealous, sending out 6 to 8 emails, asking for those donations at the end of the year. And that's over like a 10-day or 14-day period of time. And it gets so frustrating for some of the end users or the receivers that they're unsubscribing. So look at your unsubscribe rate. That may give you some clues. Think about doing a pulse survey. How frequently do your people want to hear from you? But definitely using that outreach to stay connected with your donors, your volunteers, and really continuing to let people know what the organization's doing on a regular basis is really powerful and important. Are you showing gratitude? I think that this is, again, people like to get that pat on the back. People like to feel like they're doing something good. And so personally, they're going to start to feel proud that they're working on your project, they're donating, they're contributing, they're part of your success. But then that public acknowledgement or an annual event that calls them out can start to also really make a difference. So the more you show your gratitude in an outward fashion, it can be something so simple as a thank you to a list of people who made a difference for a recent event in your monthly newsletter or in your weekly email, whatever that looks like. So it might seem something really simple and trite to you, but at the end of the day, it can really kind of reboost somebody's connection to your organization and be really powerful, I think, in that regard. Is your path connected? We have been working with several organizations right now that have some disconnected communication paths. And what I mean by that is that, are your donors or your volunteers getting connected to the rest of your marketing efforts? Sometimes, a volunteer may sign up through one member, one manager in your organization. And then do they get connected to your email list? Are they intentionally being added, monitored, tracked, and invited to get more connected to your organization? I know one nonprofit that we recently spoke with, they said their pattern is very much that people come in to volunteer, and those volunteers inevitably become their biggest donors and supporters. So the importance of getting those volunteers, as an example, added to your communication list becomes really powerful and important. But sometimes in some organizations, they're disconnected. They can be disconnected due to a lack of time, due to different staff members managing different areas of responsibility, but make sure that path gets connected. Are all of your donors getting added to the right list so that they hear from you more regularly and they're hearing a lot more, they're receiving more than just that annual request for money? People like to, really know the story and learn more about you. So that stuff is really valuable too. A lot of people will have pop-ups on their web pages now and things of that nature. So, that's something you might want to consider if you don't have an automatic email sign up. I'm amazed how many nonprofits we work with that don't have that in place. And that is an easy tool. Depending on which platform you use, most of them come with an automatic pop-up pixel, and you can add that code in pretty easily, and then boom, you are able to get people added directly into your email list, get them connected to your organization. But then if that's happening, are you also going into your email list and reviewing who's been getting added? That might be great outreach and people that you want to stay connected to. So just really thinking about that whole journey, if it's a member, if it's a donor, thinking about the whole communication path, and if it's all one simple system, is a beautiful way to leverage up your growth and making sure that everybody, all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and everybody stays connected. And then, is the message clear? I've really been looking, some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, I think it's basic. I think it's stuff, it's mistakes, rookie mistakes that I made when I was young and early in my career. But a very big nonprofit association that we are part of recently sent out a communication for an event. It turns out it's two events in one. There is a free event in the morning and a paid event in the afternoon, and it's incredibly unclear. It didn't include the times in the email out. You click on the registration, and depending on, like what you click once you get to the website, you see the morning schedule. If you click other things, you see the afternoon schedule. So it really missed the mark, in my opinion. And so, sometimes again, we get too close to it. We are working on it day in and day out. We know all the details, but I encourage you to take a step back and just evaluate. Have you covered all of the basic who, what, where, why, when? And is this going to be clear to the recipient? And sometimes, having a checklist of all the things to make sure that they're getting accomplished is important. Asking others around you, maybe, it's a board member, maybe it's, a staff member, a coworker, a volunteer, but having a second set of eyes and having somebody look at your message to make sure they're seeing what you want them to see is important. I know we like to pass things around our office even and just ask everybody, like, what does this say to you? Do you have any questions once you look at this? So that we can try to make sure we're fully thinking out what the message is going to say before we share it. Catchy titles and calls to action are another thing that we need to spend more time thinking about. I feel like a lot of times, I'm a journalist by nature. That was what I studied. That was my degree. So the value of a headline really matters to me. I know that you want to be strong. I know that you want to grab people's attention, and there are a lot of demands on people's attention. So again, right, you don't want to just say annual event next October. Instead, like, how can you bring that to life, right? Like 5 new components to the Green Gala. Or Green Gala adds new components. Like, make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more appealing. 5 reasons not to miss the Green Gala. Those little things in changing up the language can start to be another way that you can just start to make some of this stuff more appealing and grab people's attention to draw them in. If it's the same old, and that's how you approach it, then I think that's the response you're going to get. So you really want to think about how you can, kind of boost people's interest in your communications. Be unique, be clever, and definitely show the personality of your organization. I think that I come from a day and an age where things used to be pretty static. And I'm so excited that that's just not the way that things are trending these days. You want to be authentic. You want to be able to show that you care. You want to be able to share a sad story. You want to be able to talk about a success. Really, right? If somebody has an amazing success story and your organization has helped somebody move on to a much better place or overcome a major challenge, those are powerful stories, and you can share that personality even in your videos. One of our clients has been doing 1-minute videos trying to promote membership in a different way. And I love that all of the members are able to shine and be themselves in their 1-minute snippet, talking about why the organization matters to them. Some are funny, some are serious, but either way, they're turning it and adding that unit of conviction that I talked about. And they're really being able to show that, again, it's an inclusive culture. And in the past, some people have thought that you had to fit a certain mold to be part of this organization. And so by shining the light on all of these beautiful personalities, it starts to say a lot about the organization and invite all people into the organization, which is powerful. A couple of things, right, to just think about. 10 ways our nonprofit is changing the world. Doesn't something like that make you want to find out, like, wow, what's going on there? Our findings might surprise you. Add that element of curiosity and a question or something that draws people in and makes them want to learn more. 5 incredible volunteer opportunities you will love is way better than, we need volunteers, or seeking volunteers for spring cleanup, right? Instead, 5 incredible volunteer opportunities you will love. Like, ooh, what can I do to help? What am I going to love to do? So just trying to think about some of that. And those calls to action have to be so clear. When I think back to that executive director role that I had and pulling out all of the old materials, it wasn't always clear. There were flyers and invitations for all of the different events, but the whole join now, get your ticket, join us, don't miss this event, get your ticket now, like those things just weren't clear. So even, buy a ticket, feed a family. Like, what is the connection? And can you make that call to action more powerful by adding some description about what your organization can accomplish when somebody participates? So I think those things all help to elevate the growth again. My first boss out of college used to always tell me the importance of saying things 8 different ways. And in my cocky, young, recent graduate self, I was like, that's ridiculous. I only wanted to hear things once or twice and be on my merry way. Over time, I've learned the value of that statement. Different people process information in different ways. And so really thinking about how you can say things in multiple ways is powerful. Some people are going to want that emotional, they say that all decisions are made at an emotional level, whether we realize it or not. And so thinking about evoking emotion in your correspondence and your messaging is incredibly important. Is it a happy ending? Is it the sadness or the challenge of a struggle? Is there some shock or disbelief in the statistics and the need for what you offer? Those kinds of things start to magnetize people in a really powerful way. And I think that when you level up on that emotion, we were, with a client at a recent fundraiser, and when a high profile individual talked about, why this organization is the one he chooses to support. And he talked about the fact that his daughter had disabilities and unfortunately she had passed, but he still wanted to support others that were experiencing what he and his wife had gone through. It was incredibly powerful at the annual event. So really thinking about how you can tap into that emotion should always be part of your messaging plan. But then think about it, right? Some people are driven on the factual side and they're a little bit more analytical. And so you want to share some facts and some stats, really put the data out there about the industry that you're serving and the need for your services, or the data around what you're doing, right? If you can say that 75% of our program participants are able to, through our program, get back on their feet or, move out of homelessness or whatever that is, 80% of our, abandoned puppies find new homes. We want to make it 90%. Like trying to think about some of those kinds of stories start to again tap into the analytical side of people too, so that again, you're reaching people who might not always be emotionally driven on the forefront and might need some of those facts to make them cross over and support. And then those personal stories, as I mentioned, they have a huge impact and help to really be able to get people on board because it personalizes your service. It personalizes what you're offering. It's no longer, right, just an organization that's helping disabled people or disabled children and including them in the world. It's now actually somebody that you've met that has a personal story And that makes a difference. A lot of organizations, right? You want your board members to fill their tables with other guests, and then you want to be able to get them on board in a way that they can start to connect directly to your organization themselves. And so all of that programming, all of that messaging, and what those stories are really do matter. And weaving that again throughout all of the year, it starts to be again a cycle. It may be the same person saying the same thing a couple of different ways, and it might be a couple of different videos. But if you get that content for your annual gala, then repurpose it on the digital platform and repurpose it and include those videos in your newsletters. Again, that helps people see themselves connected to your organization. That helps others that know them also see them and remind them why maybe they got connected to your organization. So you can leverage all of that to your greater good. And I think it's really important. And then nowadays too, right? All of the stats that are available to you, use it to your advantage. You can try a couple of different things in the year ahead as you're working on your annual planning, but go back and look at what was the post that received the most interaction. We look at this for our clients at least on a monthly basis, where we are really trying to see what was the best performing post. And what are the click rates and how many people are going through to our information, and that data has never been more easy to get your hands on. It used to be far more complicated for nonprofits. And when I started, none of that was available to me. So use that. And even if it's just on a monthly basis, or if it's maybe quarterly or half a year, take some time to do a little bit of review and see how the things you're trying are working, and then level up or do more of the good things for the second half of the year or the next quarter, and see if that changes your numbers at all. Things that I think, again, I've been seeing an awful lot of these in communications I'm receiving. So while they seem relatively straightforward, again, include the details. Receiving an email that doesn't cover that basic who, what, where, why, when, you may not get people that are going to go look deeper. You might lose them right out of the gate when you don't include those items in the email and have it on the first go round. Proofing grammar. It's so interesting to me. The tools that are available and the way that Word has evolved into an entire editor now, really important to proof grammar, but I still like having somebody else review things too. I know our rule here is that we need 2 sets of eyes on everything. Again, people get close to things, people are rushing on a deadline, and sometimes things just don't sound quite right. And one of the things that no editor online, no, electronic editor, in my opinion, can do is double check that the messaging is shining through. Is that title or that headline all that it can be? And so really, enlisting a group of people, having a system for how your materials get proofed, I think is really, really valuable. Check links in your emails. Again, I think this is like communications 101, but I've been receiving a lot of things and I'm clicking on links and I'm getting 404 page not found messages. And, in this day and age, that's just an embarrassment, and it can be really difficult. I also think that a lot of organizations have gotten pretty good in the way that they just send out an updated email if something does happen to go out, because again, sometimes it's going to happen. But if you start to always have a follow-up email because you have to have corrections, I think you lose a lot of credibility. And so really making sure that you are looking professional. And again, right, I'm dating myself, but that organization that I was, first time executive director for, everything had been Xeroxed and photocopied over and over and over. And it was hard without a budget and a designer to make things look professional and good. But these days, with all the free platforms out there, with all of the videos and photos and everything that's available to you, it's never been easier to make things look good. So really think about kind of that whole image, and that proofing and those details, they matter. Data accuracy, I've already talked about that a little bit, but we've had emails that I have seen where, it'll say the day of the week with the wrong date. So make sure that those are lining up. Make sure you're taking the time to look at the calendar. And I think fact checking, again, as a past journalism major, if we had errors, they were F's. If names were misspelled, if information was wrong, it was an automatic F. So it is drilled into me after 4 years of college that should not be happening. But for others who maybe didn't have that same training, you might want to have a checklist of the things that you want to make sure you're reviewing. Or maybe if you have a junior team member who's, getting up to speed, or they're starting to do the drafting and then you review the final, maybe you want to give them a checklist, right? Of these items, do the links all work? Is the grammar right? Is the call to action strong? Is the headline good? And those might be ways to make sure they're kind of checklisting through the basics before it even gets to you if you're the final stop. Or if you need to, maybe you're a one-man shop and you need to share that out with a board member or have somebody else review your work, or a committee chair, or whatever that looks like. And maybe giving them this checklist will help them be a better support to you if you can tell them or encourage them of the things you want them to look for. And then make sure you're capturing data. Again, this is one of those situations where I think that you should definitely be having the platform and the ability to put a pop-up, sign up for our newsletter, get connected, follow us on social media, leveraging those items that are available. But once you have that data, what are you doing with it? Again, making sure that you are finding ways to connect. I mean, for some of your organizations, if you get a new newsletter subscriber, maybe that's a good outreach for your development department. So just thinking about how you're capturing that data, maybe getting more information about those people, and or guests at your annual event. That is a one place where you'll have a table captain, and maybe I think it's easier in this digital age, in this hybrid world where we're able to send out communications to our table captain's guests. But I know in the past they would bring people to the event, and maybe we, in an effort not to offend them or inconvenience them, we would not actually capture their data in a meaningful way that we could then send a follow-up and try to convert them into a supporter for our organizations. So really thinking about, again, how you're capturing all the data and then how you're sharing it within your different committees, your different team members, within your organization for maximum growth, incredibly important. And again, leveraging that data so that it absolutely, works to help you continue to evolve. I would love, as we move into the question and answer section today, I would love to ask if you would put in the chat one thing that you have learned today that you can implement immediately. I think the importance of these kinds of sessions, sometimes we make the time, and again, we mean to get back to that, or we want to return to doing something important. But I would really invite everybody who's participating today to add a thought in the chat about what you really, one nugget that you can immediately apply that's going to help you level up your communications. Clear and concise communication. Instead of join us saying why they should. I love it. Clear call to action. Engaging messaging and calls to actions and funneling are all key. I love it. Saying it multiple ways. That's one that I just, I really think a lot of us, we think we put it out there. And I know for one of the organizations, a lot of membership drives. I don't know if, not all of you may be membership based, but it's a great example with a membership drive that we manage twice a year for one of our clients. I'm always encouraging the team, that we absolutely want to show kind of, some people are price conscious. So we want to put it in the words of, those people, like, why is this, what's the value of this, right? Why does this, it may seem like a lot to some, it seems like a little to others, but why is there value in how much this costs? And so we show like the value of what they get, and that's like a few $1,000s, and then the membership cost is a few $100s. Then for others, we'll talk about some of the like this is a community. It's far more intangible, but it's the fact that connect with people who get it, can connect with people like you. And so then we kind of like put that whole emotional, like there are people here that you can't find in other places. And then sometimes it's the straight up, like this is a savings. This is, for those bargain hunters, right? But it's three very different mindsets. And so, and with that, why the community is different, then we tap into those personal stories. Again, the savings and the value, pretty factual. Some programs you're going to get to take advantage of, pretty factual, but then telling those individual stories and really leveraging that is incredibly important. Let's see, schedule the half-day communication audit with the leadership team. Love it. Love it. Use the data. That one's easy to get away from. And I will tell you, on using the data, it's real easy to say, yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, I'm going to do that. And then we always let other things get in the way. So put it on your calendar. Make a date with yourself. Maybe it's, 1 hour in the middle of the month, and maybe you hole up in a coffee shop and, grab your favorite beverage and take time to look at the stats, but looking at how things are trending and really evaluating if you can find anything to help you grow your communications, incredibly important. And repurposing content. Work smarter, not harder, and lean on the best performing posts and campaigns. That's a great one. And same thing, if you are putting articles out, if you are putting, I think not enough people think about the connection between the electronic newsletter, or even if you're still doing a printed newsletter, and the value of then leveraging that same content on social media. The newsletter can get printed, and then the PDF can go on the website, and then you can push out the individual articles on social media. So that gives you more content and more of a spotlight on each of the pieces that you maybe have included. And I love, the email newsletter can really help you reach several audiences all in one piece. But again, something that I think enough people don't think about is there a volunteer section in your newsletter? Is there something that might speak to donors in particular in your newsletter? And so really thinking about how you mix that up. And I do think that sometimes in some of our communications, things that we include every single time that we send a newsletter, I think they may start to fall kind of flat. People stop kind of looking at it because it's like, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, I've looked at that before. So finding a way to mix it up, even if you alternate, maybe every other month, you're switching out a graphic or a detail or an article, like a note about something, a sign up or a participation. I think that helps just add some variation that keeps it fresh and holds on to people's attention better, because we just have a knack like, oh, we've seen that before, we don't need to read that. So really just mixing it up a little bit will matter. With that, I would love to turn it over to questions and answers. So please do put your questions for anything that you'd like a little bit more information on in the chat box, or in the Q&A box, I mean. And I love this. So we have a question. Is there a rule of thumb for frequency to contact donors? I usually contact once per 3 to 4 months. So I think this is a great question. And I think that it's all about relationship. I think that we organically find ways to kind of identify what that frequency is. And I don't know that it's the same for all of your donors. I value all donors, all supporters, but I know for one client, we currently have, one of the lowest level of sponsors is just wanting a lot more of our time and attention and a lot more of the spotlight. And we really are trying to convert them. We're trying to grow them. I like to plant seeds and keep trying to level up our supporters. But the reality is that I have to really remember that this is the year-end time, and I need to be focusing on my major supporters and making sure I'm giving them the time and attention they need too. And so I'm not turning away that smaller sponsor, but I'm also trying to limit kind of that access so that I'm not forgetting to get to the bigger ones that I have to renew and want to also try to grow. So I think, you will find that frequency. I think some people, they want to stay more connected. They may be a bigger person. They may want to stop by more periodically. You may have a different kind of relationship. And so I think you have to look at it a little bit of what feels right with each of those individual people. And I do like when you talk about the rule of frequency. Again, the thing that I like is coming up, when I first got into sponsorship and donorship, stewardship and all of that, people would always talk about, we only hear from the organization when they want money. And so really thinking about how you can send out those holiday cards. Maybe, I think a lot of nonprofits are positioned incredibly well to leverage actually November to your advantage, because it's all about Thanksgiving and gratitude. There's no better time to like just a simple card, note, handwritten, get it out and remind people how grateful you are for them and what a difference they've made. I found in a lot of my outreach on thank yous, I try to again be really specific, like because of donors like you, we've been able to do XYZ this year. Not just thank you for your support, right? Very broad, very general. But the more specific you can be, the more again that they start to be like, oh, I did that. So I think those things really matter. So I don't have a particular rule of thumb that I can share with you, but I definitely think mixing it up between the asks and the general information. And then really, maybe you ask people. I've gotten to the point that sometimes I'm like, how often do you want to hear from me? When should we check in again? So that then I can set up an auto reminder and put that in my system and hold on to that information. So I hope that helped. I have a question. So fundraising or marketing in a very small shop, where to spend 80% of my time? Great question, and very hard, right? So, you have to be, I think, again, if you come up with some of that key messaging and some of your marketing efforts, I think that it can kind of start to get a little bit easier over the course of the year. I think leveraging resources sometimes too, knowing what the best use of your particular time is. I certainly, think that that's why sometimes you might want to work with a writer. They might be able to help you, let you stay focused on your donor development and your fundraising, because that's really where you need to be, but still making sure that the marketing is happening, because it's so incredibly important. But coming up with some of that messaging, planning out what it's going to look like over the course of the year. And then sometimes can you do both, right? Again, in the fundraising, can you talk to your donors? Can you be connecting with the donor and asking them why this matters to them, why they value you, what their favorite part about your organization is, and generating your marketing content while checking in with your donors. So I think that some of that becomes really important. And, I think that, again, that's going to be customized to each one of your organizations. I love also trying to enlist other people to help you on the marketing. If you can set the framework and then have other people within your organization on your board draft the content, write the information, help them get involved. Sometimes that can make a difference. And I love leveraging the photos. Again, I think that those are ways that you can do both. You're recognizing some of your biggest supporters at your annual event, but you're also kind of showing people like how amazing your organization is and what you're accomplishing. So trying to find places where it can cross over and you can actually be serving both purposes. I hope that that helps make it all a little bit easier for you. But at the end of the day, only you know how much donor stewardship is needed and how you are spending that. But what I would say is also evaluate if your donors are like what level, because if you need to be securing more $10,000 donors, and you're spending a lot of time stewarding $1,000 donors who have no chance of leveling up, perhaps, is that the right use of your time? So again, I think we have to constantly be asking ourselves, what's the highest and best use of my time that only I can do? And what other resources do I have that might be able to support me in some of the other initiatives? So, question, how do you manage concerns about sharing photos on social media? Some people don't want photos that include them to be shared, but we don't always know that. Great question. So with that, we love actually and recommend that you have a photo disclaimer included in your materials. We generally are doing it at registrations. We are generally doing it for our clients that are membership based. We do it when a new member signs up. And so we're putting that information out there that people are agreeing to it as part of the registration process. It doesn't create one more thing for us to do. It's just part of what goes up on the registration page, on the registration form. And then there's a box and that they can check and they can look at it. Most people don't respond. Most people, are fine with that. But then if you do get that stickler who doesn't want to be tagged or included, we even have gotten to the point on a lot of our registration forms, we're asking for the social media handles. We don't want our team to have to go look for them when they're helping a nonprofit. We want to streamline that. So if that information can come right in as part of the registration, it's way easier to make sure we're tagging the right Susie Smith out on social media, right? Because there's probably 200 Susie Smiths. So I think the more you can kind of include that photo waiver right on the front end, or the video waiver, the easier that is. So I hope that helped. I would like to just share our information today. If anybody has, ongoing thoughts about this topic or anything that you would like a little bit more information on, I love to be available to you. I would be happy to schedule a time to connect. Big Buzz is back in the swing of things. We took a little bit of a break on the Breakfast Club, but we will be, now that it's fall, we are doing the breakfast clubs on the second Thursday of every month, varying topics. So if you have a topic that you're interested in learning more about and you are not seeing enough resources out there, please let us know. We're always trying to make these as impactful as possible. And then we also remain available for consulting as needed. And we are an outsourcing partner. So if you think there's a way we can support you, we would love to learn more about your current needs. But I'm also happy to just answer questions and be a resource for you, because I know how hard it can be when you sometimes feel like maybe you're the only person who understands your current situation, and you just need somebody who understands to bounce some ideas off of. And so we remain available to answer questions and support you whenever needed. Feel free to reach out if we can help. And with that, if there are no more questions today, I thank you for starting your day with us and really appreciate that you chose to be at the Big Bus Breakfast Club today. I hope you have a wonderful day.